Here we go. Hi, everyone. You're watching episode 85 of Yield TV. It's funny when we come back from the weekend, I'm always like, I just haven't done an episode in like a few days, and I start to get nervous, like, oh no, what are the few buttons that I press, the 3 responsibilities I have? So hi, everyone. Welcome back. It is Monday, March 15th, 2021. Today, we're going to do a DeFi class on how to govern on-chain DAOs. And I'm not sure if I know of any other type of DAO other than on-chain. But we're lucky. We've got Dennis and Bertram joining us. And Dennison's joined us before and taught us all about governance with crypto assets, namely with DeFi. And I'm excited to have him because he's been building this tool called Tally. It's basically a one-stop shop for governance. So we'll show it off along the way. It should fit neatly into our conversation. So anyways, Dennison, welcome to Yield TV. How are you doing?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be here and talk with you.
I think you're the first to come back for a second visit. So you're just you're the special one. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's funny. You came on in the first. I mean, we started doing Yield TV in October, I think, and you came on pretty early, first 10 episodes. So yeah, it's great to see you again. I remember when you were describing what Tally is. I mean, I remember getting it. Like, I didn't use the term one-stop shop for governance, but I understood that governance is pretty messy right now. And so, yeah, I'm curious. Like, we could start there today. We're going to talk about really what are the challenges of governance. And I guess before we do get started on that, I want to talk about your background a little bit and how you got started in the space. For anyone that's unfamiliar with DeFi Class, this is where we cover everything from basics to more advanced topics in DeFi. We'll do a lot of screen sharing, just try to show you at the ground level, how do you actually get stuff done? And governance is a very important part of that equation. So here is the schedule for today. This is what we'll cover. So we'll talk about what exactly is governance if you're new and why it matters. What are challenges historically in governing? How can you govern with Tally? What are the risks to consider in this? And then what's next for on-chain governance and Tally? So anyways, Dennison, could we start with just the highlights of your background? How did you get into the crypto space?
Yeah, so I got into the crypto space in end of 2011, 2012. I actually ran one of the first, if not the first, Bitcoin exchange in the Czech Republic. It was called buybtc.cz, CZ. That was a wild time. So I've been in the space for a long time. I took a couple years off when I was working on a creative technology company. Basically, I had been a fashion photographer for a long time, and the fashion brands had switched to doing digital media. So for the brands, I was doing a lot of stuff in that sort of realm, and then came back to the crypto space after a while for some other projects. I was developer advocate at OpenZeppelin. I previously founded Dapp Hero, which was a sort of abstraction layer on top of Web3. It allowed you to build dApps without using code or just using HTML. And now I'm building Tally. So I'm co-founder of Tally, and I have a really awesome team, and we're building the future of governance.
Wait, can you back up and tell me more about when you were building or when you ran an exchange then? What was the price of Bitcoin then? What year was that?
Oh my God, it hurts my heart every time I think about it. To give you an idea of the price, I paid a developer at the time 100 Bitcoins for a bug fix on something.
Oh man!
I do not know how did I believe in the future and not just accumulate Bitcoin? Why are we not doing this interview from my super yacht? I don't know. But it hurts. It hurts a lot. But it's really funny. One company that I one of the projects I'd done in between was making hardware wallets, Bitcoin hardware wallets. Very beautiful. I still think one of the most beautiful hardware wallets. And I paid them in Bitcoin, and they never sold it. And they emailed me like a couple of weeks ago, just be like, oh my God, we forgot about the Bitcoin you paid us. We still have it. And this is like 2013 to like today. And I'm like, well, you have more Bitcoin than I have. So
wow. Oh, that's cool. That's a cool story. Yeah, I've heard of a bunch of people lately saying it's something like I paid someone in this and they realized it, or just like I helped a friend buy it. I don't know why they got interested and totally forgot about it, and then they discover it. It's got to be a wonderful surprise. Before we do get started, too, you mentioned that you were a photographer. I didn't catch that the last time we talked. What I guess like any stories from that time that have taught you lessons about the work that you're doing today?
I don't know of much. So I was a fashion photographer for a long time, like 15 years, mostly in Europe. Yeah, a long time.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, we were talking about Europe before. Before we got on, we were talking about like how awesome it is to eat outside in New York or in other parts of the U.S. that traditionally didn't have lots of like tables outside, and how Europe adapted to eating outdoors more after was it the pandemic, the Spanish flu or something?
Yeah, well, they had a whole series of like public health crises. The plague had returned in modern times, like a number of times.
Yeah.
Other sort of just like outbreaks, things like, I don't know, now I'm going to mess these up, but like, diphtheria and like cholera and these sort of like things that we generally get vaccinated against today.
Yeah. They're all on the Oregon Trail. That old video.
All on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I remember that was what that game taught me, was about old diseases. They're like, you have cholera. Yeah, I'm like, cholera.
Today you play, it's just like you died from COVID-19.
Yeah, that
the rest of the wagon trail doesn't believe it's real. What do? Eat them? Right.
So here, let's start out then with let's talk at a higher level about what exactly is governance for anyone that's new. So can you help us define what is governance and essentially why it matters in the scope of DeFi? We could talk about this more broadly across all of crypto, but I think most of our audience participates in using DeFi applications.
Mm-hmm. So, this is a really broad topic, as you mean, but
that's basically I'm not answering. Right. Hey, so can you define what is governance, and then we'll talk about climate change after this.
We'll solve it. At a high level, really simply, we are creating smart contracts, like code that sort of runs permissionlessly on the blockchain out there, and that's what most of these DeFi protocols are. Certainly, if you're putting your money in it, you hope it's a decentralized, open, permissionless thing. The catch here is that, of course, this software is being built by humans, and we're pretty bad at most things, specifically with writing great software. So, these protocols, even protocols that are trying to do like governance minimization, there's always a need to have some sort of control over situations that you don't expect, right? Like the space moves quickly, so there may be new interfaces that you want to connect your systems to. The risk of different things changes a lot. You may want your system to be able to calibrate for risk. You look at Maker or Compound, they take into consideration the riskiness of assets before listing them. They ask their community, hey, what should we support? So there's a lot of real practical applications for governance and why it matters in DeFi, right? If we were JP Morgan, we would have some team of people that make the decisions and call all the shots, right? But we're trying to build a future where we make the decisions and we call the shots. To do that, we need some sort of system to coordinate our decision making. Right, and that is essentially what governance is, right? A system for coordinating decision making to manage a system, right? So in this case, in DeFi, these tend to be a lot of financial systems, but they don't have to be, right? If you look at other DAO types like Moloch, that's kind of like a grants type system. Aragon is a more general purpose, but feels a little bit more like co-op on the blockchain type of system, right? The point is that we've created a machine. I like to use it kind of like a locomotive, right? Like it's going forward, but you still kind of need to like pull the levers now and then, even though the tracks are already set, right? You can't go left, can't go right. The tracks are already set, but you still kind of need to adjust things now and then. And that's what governance is for.
Yeah, well said. I have nothing to add to any of it. It's just it's important that one understands as they go down the rabbit hole of DeFi protocols that you're just no longer dealing with what we know as traditional businesses, where you see like a Tim Cook at Apple making lots of big decisions, being accountable to shareholders. It's much more community oriented. It is to me the definition of being a community-owned protocol, and I think it's so radical. It's something that I feel like every week that I'm in DeFi longer, or in Ethereum, in crypto longer, you appreciate it more. It's one of those topics like no one gets into crypto, gets into DeFi right away and is like, excuse me, I'd like to learn about governance first off.
Sure.
They go down the rabbit hole of like, what can I do with my money? And what sort of applications are there? But you soon realize that the voting power behind these different protocols, that's what dictates the real future and success of them. So, which is why I'm excited to show off Tally too here today. Can you talk me through like, what are some of the historical challenges in governing a DAO, or just, I guess like maybe this leads into more of like what you guys have been thinking about solving with Tally and why you built Tally?
So there are a lot of challenges in governing a DAO, right? And DAO is also a really broad term. I sort of personally see the Ethereum space having a number of different kind of DAOs, right? I sort of mentioned this before. To me, Moloch feels like a sort of like a grant giving organization, or kind of like a treasury manager in a way, with a group of people who pool their funds and decide how to spend it. Aragon to me feels like a general purpose kind of organization which is really flexible, but it generally feels a little bit like a co-op commune type of organization. Then we have things like Compound's Governor Alpha, which is the governance that Tally supports, and that is what Compound has created. And those kind of DAOs feel very much like a kind of a managerial style DAO, right? Something that is like a stewardship DAO, where the point of it is to allow you to sort of like adjust levers and make little changes here. They're not catch-all DAOs, right? Like the Governor Alpha is kind of very specific. And then you have multi-sigs, which are kind of like a free-form general partnership in the sort of like blockchain sense, where if a certain number of people agree to something, you make it happen together. So there's a lot of different structures, but the challenges remain kind of the same across them, right? How do you coordinate individuals to agree on things at scale? How do you deal with things like voter apathy? How do you deal with things like some people having much more voting power than others? Simple things like, how do you let people know there's a proposal, right? Like JP Morgan can just call everybody in the email the entire organization and say, hey, everybody's fired. This is what's happening, right? But for DAO, it's very difficult when they don't even know who necessarily are participating in the DAO, who are the participants, right? So the challenges are both also technical, right? Like, right now Ethereum is a little bit more expensive than it used to be to use. So some decisions are expensive to make. The barrier to entry for cost can, prevent some people from participating. But then it's sort of like the social coordination level of understanding what participation is valuable, who do you want participating, how do these things all work and come together. So it's very much a technology, scalability, and social type of challenges that you have in governing a DAO. And that doesn't even address really like if people are aligned with what the mission of what the DAO is trying to do specifically.
Yeah, I would say from firsthand experience, which the last time we talked, I'd say I was still more limited in terms of what I had participated in terms of different DeFi DAOs. And man, it's a communication issue. Like I think the way you put it is much more eloquent, but at the end of the day, it's like, how do I stay informed? How do I not become, as you put, like, how do I not become apathetic? How do you just keep me engaged? And it sounds silly, but it's partially to do with, I think, some of the better intentions in the community to not collect emails, to not go that route of saying, hey guys, we're going to make a centralized email list. And then, by doing that, then we'll just communicate and put one more email in your inbox.
Sure.
But I'm interested, even today we were talking about, there was a DNS attack with Cream and Pancake Swap. And I think it goes hand in hand with what you guys are doing with Tally is real-time notifications. We all use Discord and Twitter, and they're pretty effective. But and in fact, as you talk about the spectrum of DAOs, you could go into Discord and discover some incredible DAOs that are running strictly in Discord. But I look forward to like push notifications too, like protocol level push notifications with the Ethereum push notification service. But yeah, anything else there to call out, Dennison? I think, like, honestly, like as you were describing it, it just, again, it makes Tally really come alive to me. Like I participate in Uniswap and Aave and Pull Together and geez, what else? There's like two. Those are the three I've been most attentive to lately. So I was like, whatever can help me consolidate and aggregate information in the future would be great.
Well, that's great because that's what we're working on.
Yeah, exactly. Being blunt, you had like reached out saying, hey, we're actually going to go live with this soon. We had like kept in touch about it, and I looked at it and I was like, holy shit, this is like exactly what I was like needing. So, which is great. That's why we build products that people.
That's why we build products. We hope they need them.
That's right. Well, let's hop into that then, because the product really comes alive then. I can start to share your screen. Are you okay with? I've got it here ready to share.
Yeah. It looks like it's good.
Go. Cool.
Yeah. So what we're looking at here is the Tally homepage today. We've just gone live, like public live. We've been sort of like low key live since December or so. We showed it off in the Compound Governance call a couple months ago. We've been working on it a lot since then. It's not finished yet. There's still a lot of things that we're adding in real time. So there's like some new things that I wish were already pushed to master, but they're not yet. So we'll sort of like look at what we have right now. Basically, where we've started, because we can't do everything, we've started with support around Compound Governor Alpha style governances, right? We really decided early on to really focus, even if that means that we can't list everybody, because not everyone is using Compound Governor Alpha style governances. And actually, there's going to be an update to Compound Governor Alpha that coming out soon from Compound Governor Bravo, which will bring a few new changes that we will be supporting later. And that's actually very exciting because that's sort of represents one of the first, real updates in what's kind of becoming like a DeFi Lego, a governance Lego. Robert Leshner from Compound, he had mentioned that how Compound was really becoming the standard that DeFi protocols look to for their governance. So that's what we're supporting here, right? So what we can do is we can look in, we see the governances that we support. We have a little like the news feed that we keep up here with, sort of just like latest things that's happening that we find interesting. You can see, of course, recent proposals that are happening in the ecosystem. And then we have sort of like a box that gives you information about like the top voters. This component will probably change. We've been really struggling with how to classify top voters in the governance space. Like, what does being a top voter mean? We tried a couple different ways of like ranking. We call them sort of like voters. by sort of like how many people are delegating to them versus how much token delegation power they have. We came up with this metric called the voting power index, which was basically the dollar value of your votes. But none of these really properly captured like the sort of like value of voters individually. So this component will probably change in the future when we sort of come up with a better sort of like methodology of representing that.
No, that's really interesting because I guess what you could also rank it by oh boy, I was about to say rank by the value of those assets, but that wouldn't matter. Like right away when I saw the total delegating addresses, that's interesting to me because it does tell me how many individuals, but then of course there's wanting to know like how much of the total governing power that's available out there does one person have. Right. And then what I'm looking at on the far right there, that is like Andre's multi-sig here.
Yes.
He has 477 addresses delegating to him and that's all to Uni. If it was
split, that's all in Uni.
Cool. Okay, good. Yeah. So that
if it was like Gauntlet and Dharma, for example, they are voters in both Uni and Comp.
That makes sense. Okay, good. Yep. Yeah, I can see they're a little more involved. Yeah, honestly, I'd love to see that list extend too, because I had no idea. I looked at the top 5 and was like, oh, I guess that makes sense to me. I knew Dharma especially was very involved in Uniswap and Compound, but I'd love to see the full list.
Yeah, that's coming. We will show the full list. Again, we're sort of wondering, you can certainly look in and see by governance. So if we were to jump into something like Compound, which has an active proposal right now, you could go in and see the voters that we have here. So these are the top ones. You can see we have a little modal that sort of shows you more. We're actually going to expand this so that you can get a better view of like everybody and understand. But so yeah, we give you the ability to see, how often do they, vote on proposals, their sort of voting weight, their total number of votes. And you can sort of also see it here on this chart that gives you maybe an idea of what the voting power is. We may also change this in the future because in some governances that are sort of more set, like Compound or Uniswap, these numbers don't seem to change that often. So we are also thinking about constantly thinking about more ways to give greater visibility and insight and like actionable information and understanding the governance that you're participating in.
There is a lot of information here. Sorry, I was fixated on the homepage, but there is. As I was looking over this, I was trying to think of like what else would I need to still find elsewhere, and I'm actually in a good way I'm struggling to think of anything else here. But that's why I was excited for this. Is I think like one of the problems you all are trying to solve for is to help people make governance easy. And part of what's not easy normally is keeping up with information, collecting that information. Still probably doesn't replace the fact that anyone is going to be very active in like a Discord and following, maybe newer teams with like what they tweet out. But this is a lot. This is a lot of information with all these proposals and voting power.
Yeah, what we see is, one of the first sort of like comments people had is that on-chain governance tends to be expensive. So it seemed like maybe people wouldn't participate. And while the sort of like voters to holder ratio is probably not so large, what we do see fairly active participation amongst the people who do participate. So if you look at, this is a pool together proposal. I guess this is their first proposal that they had, right? Like it's really interesting to look in here and see who is participating and what the breakdown of the participation actually looks like, right? And we give nice tools to be able to like look in to see like when people are participating, to give you an idea. Like here you sort of see that participants participate early, right? Early in the voting process, and then sort of things taper off. But if we go into some other proposals, there was one that I'd seen recently that was very active. In the inverse community, by the way, is really active governance community, especially for the size. But if we look into, right, like, so if you look at this kind of participation, graphs like this really show, in my mind, that on-chain governance is something that will drive people to participate when they care about it. And here you can get a real, if you compare this to another proposal from another governance, you see these circles there are big holders, but the big holders are all kind of the same size. And then there's smaller holders, and they're also all kind of the same size, right? So maybe you have a little bit of a tier system here, but you start to get a picture of what this governance looks like, right? And then when we check out the actual like voting timeline, it becomes a little bit dramatic, right? Like in the beginning, there's like yes votes, then the votes are just sort of going up, and then people start to vote no, and it gets like really, this has been going back and forth where is it going to pass? Is it not going to pass? Is it going to pass, right? So people have been participating up until kind of the last moment here to enact this. And that's really exciting, right? And that's the sort of, you can look at this ecosystem of this DeFi project and say, oh, that's a pretty healthy community, right? Like all of these people had to spend gas to participate in this. They all thought, make DAO great again.
Wow.
Yeah, simple executable code.
That is really, I missed this completely. Like I was just kind of clicking around the other day, and this is so valuable to be able to like look at that, just to, because I think like one of the things that I've probably learned more since the last time you and I talked, I think in October, is I have gotten that much more involved in different DAOs and really started to understand like how it is the lifeblood of a protocol, like really starting to understand that like you can't fake the activity that I've seen across many different communities. But one of the challenges to me was like, I don't have time all day. I don't have time to like hop community to community because like, I'm working on Zapper, but like all of us at Zapper are very passionate about all sorts of different DeFi projects. And this is like one of the ways I'm thinking I could start to like better gauge that. Like, I would have never known that inverse finance has such an active community. I know Uniswap does. It's clear as day. I know SushiSwap does. It's clear as day, but this is cool.
Well, and that's interesting because you can compare that, right? So if you look at the Uniswap grants program, which succeeded, that looks very different. One of the things that we want to do is add tools that allow you to sort of zoom in here.
Yeah.
Little tiny people down there, right? But they're still participating, but you see how the voting power is different, right? When you compare it to inverse,
very different.
There's kind of only two sizes of voter. Here, very different world, right? You can go into maybe one that didn't pass.
It's funny too, because I got caught up in like how many people hold the token. That's always something I've looked at out of interest to see like, oh wow, like this community that this community has 5,000 holders. To me, like if you can get 5,000 holders, that's pretty impressive. But it's kind of a benchmark at this point to have that many, even though something like Uniswap has 189,000. But when you look at the way the vote went, it tells a totally different story.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're allowing you to do is you can like click into these voters, right? So this is Dharma, and you can start to understand a bit how the voting distribution of voters actually is, right? So they have 15 million votes in what are we looking at? Uniswap, but this address doesn't have any tokens at all. This is all delegated power, right? So we can look in and we see who else is delegating to them. One of the things that we're working on right now is trying to get richer identity. We feel like identity is a really key thing here. And so we aggregate a lot of identity sources that are out there and put it in one place. But we're still working on trying to get in even deeper, right? Because once you get to this person, they have 5 million tokens and they're delegating to Dharma, but you don't know anything about them, right? They don't do anything else. They just hold the tokens and delegate their voting power. But we do see some interesting things happening with that. And I'm trying to see if maybe we can find some of the exciting groups, because there are some interesting groups here, like the blockchain clubs, right? So you have the Stanford Blockchain Club. They have 50,000 votes. All their voting power is delegated to them by someone else. They don't have any tokens, but they have 2% voting weight, right? And what we see happening is we see tools like Tally are helping some large token holders, primarily funds who don't want to act on their own, actually delegating power out to student groups who are then, enabling, like they are participating in governance themselves, right? So it's, if you look at the Stanford Blockchain Club, it's just like, why did they vote no against the, Prop 39, right? And that was a pretty contentious one, I think. Yeah, maybe evenly contentious. And I think this one passed. But there's a crazy story about this. I forgot what it is. I don't want to like say something and be like totally wrong. You look at that voting timeline, and it's just like, who pushed it over the edge? Polychain.
Wow.
Onchain, right? And then A16Z, right? So you're like, okay, and Pantera Capital. You're like, okay, I guess somebody wanted this to happen, right?
It's just so interesting, because I have heard, like many people, like you catch these as like quick little, news stories in DeFi, but like to go back to these now, I'm learning so much just to like see the voting timeline and see that split there. This is really, wow. This is really, I want to like remind everyone, like, we don't like plan this out. Like we normally set up like a little agenda and then we talk through it. So like my enthusiasm for this is all genuine. I love this when I get to like explore the product with you, of course, because I'm like learning in real time and seeing how valuable this is. But Jesus, this is, yeah, I would tell anyone, if you're in a community, you should go back through all these different proposals and really start to like understand and visualize like what might have happened there, because it might inform some lessons of how you should move forward, or like what needs to be done to get something passed.
That's very important. It's very important to see where, these communities are very different, right? Some of these are VC funded, some of them are totally organic. There are the social dynamics of the sort of social decision making are very different between these communities. And there's one, I think, here in Inverse, which is kind of wild, if I can find it.
Totally.
Right, these two, proposal 6 and 7, right? What were they? Seize the tokens from other people, from inactive addresses, right? Proposal, seize the inverse tokens of fully inactive addresses and transfer them to the DAO for later use, right? That's a wild thing for governance to do. But that's also the power of governance, and that's why governance is so important. Here, the inverse community, they're a really great community. They're really strong. They have a strong rationale here. Maybe if Tally had been around then, because we do have a nice centralized database of emails, because you can subscribe to notifications. So this might have been a proposal you might have wanted to hear about if your address had been one of the inactive addresses. Of course, I don't know the full classification of inactive addresses, so clearly the community here thought that this was a good proposal, but it's exciting to see how it's just overwhelming, right? And they have a strong rationale, and they sort of like the support what their decision making is behind it. But it's you really see that people are participating actively, and that it is a valuable ecosystem for them. And sort of the point I was making earlier is that you can sign up with Tally. Give us your email. If you're concerned about email security or privacy, just give us a Proton email, a fake email, right? And then you subscribe to your governances. So I can log in with Twitter as well, which helps. You can like link your Twitter to an address, so you can create your own profile. this feature is half in progress, so it's not fully done, but it should be done in like the next week or two. But basically, if you are one of these addresses, you can link it so that people know who you are, right? And that's useful when you're trying to like get more people to delegate to you. But what you can do is you can actually subscribe to the different notifications for like the protocols themselves. So when there is a proposal, you will be informed. So you know that something's happening, right? Because some of these votes are very important, and we intend to build on the sort of notification feature as well. It would be great to see if EPNS, when their product comes out, that would be something we would love to integrate. EPNS, hit me up.
Yeah. I'll message Harsh here. Yeah, he should get.
Right.
There's actually here's another idea someone just threw out. And I'm sure you're already thinking about this, just that people would love to be able to like log their votes. Now, if you could do that in a way that helps to save gas, which kind of also goes hand in hand with like, you could basically batch all the transactions, I'm assuming here. And
right.
Yeah.
So,
would love to see something like that. Or like we talked about this earlier, like we all love Snapshot. This is complementary to what Snapshot does. Would love to see some sort of like coming together of if you're able to like have Snapshot incorporated or Snapshot has Tally incorporated. So
actually, I was speaking with Fabian earlier today. I've always been a big fan of Snapshot. I'm really interested in that idea. Like I said, we've been focusing on on-chain governance. So I think this is something we will explore together going forward. Because the sort of off-chain signature part is a big key component in that decision making. Like decision making is like a continuum, right? It starts as some idea in someone's head and then eventually becomes an executed thing. So that's a big part of that process. As to the question about the votes, we are working on a tool right now. So one developer in the Compound ecosystem handles Arrow, ARR00. He built a tool called comp.vote for Compound, which is a sort of gasless voting. The Compound Governor Alpha contract allows for voting and delegation by signature. So what you can do is you can just get the signature and then somebody else can pay the gas. So even in something like Compound, you can do a delegation, and there's an option to like create a signature. So you can create a signature. Oh, I'm on Rinkeby. But you can create a signature, and then you can actually import an existing signature. Still on Rinkeby. So we're probably going to like redo that feature in a little bit of a different way to be a little bit more self-explanatory. But we have what we're working on right now is an open source gas refunding tool. What we see is there are a lot of actions that happen in governance that cost money to do, such as voting. And most of these protocols have some amount of treasury funds that could potentially pay for participation. So we're building an open source gas refunding contract so that any protocol, any individual can say, hey, here's one ETH, and I want this one ETH to be spent refunding the gas costs for calling this function on this contract, and the person must have, more than 100 votes for us to refund their gas fee, right? And then what we do, and what we do is we refund 99.9% of the gas fee. And the reason why it's not 100% is that there's actually weird, minor, front-running, griefing attacks that happen when you actually refund people 100%. But the idea here is that if we can go in, I think it's maybe inverse.
Yeah.
Right? Refund gas fees for finance operations, right? Like here you have a protocol where the team has to pay themselves to move proposals along the process. So this tool, this gas refunder contract, it would allow you to compensate users for voting. Let's say it's something where you want to have like a referendum and the protocol has $1 billion in your treasury. Well, if you have active users who vote, you should cover, the cost of covering your members' participation. That's just the cost of running an organization, right? In real life, somebody has to pay for the pizza, right? Like
that's right.
That's not a crazy thing. It's not like, hey, we're going to have a big meeting down at the school. Everybody bring your own pizza, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Like So we're making tools to allow for that, because here Nor had to personally cover the gas fees for doing different actions in the protocol, right? And that $21,000, that's not a small amount of fees, right? So we're trying to help with that and improve that process. And in addition to that, I don't know if there's any there's a live proposal here. We actually give for the protocols themselves administration tools, right? So here in the life cycle of a proposal, there are actions that need to generally be done, right? Like once you vote on a proposal, you need to queue it forward, and then you need to execute it, or you need to cancel it. So we have this little administration panel. So if there's any eligible proposals, right, when this is finished, if it's successful, the queue button will be enabled, and anyone can come and queue this proposal. In the future, with the gas refunding contract, anyone will be able to do it, because these are, of course, protected by the smart contract itself. So this is fine to be open. Cancel is only a certain circumstance where the user who proposed the proposal, their voting threshold drops below the minimum during the lifetime of the vote, and then you can cancel it. So we give that as a tool. That's a administration tool that's available. But also, and this page is a little bit ugly, we're still working on the design, you can actually use Tally to create your own proposal, right? Now, these different governances, they have different thresholds for voting that you need to have before you're allowed to make a proposal. But today, creating proposals is pretty cumbersome a process, right? Like you have to do it, through a scripts. Sometimes people use Remix. It's not very user friendly. So here we give a great interface where you can create your proposal here. You can add commands where you add the target contract address, the values, the methods, the data, stuff that you would send to it. So you can create a proposal right here. You can basically do the management of your DAO, of your governance, directly from Tally, which I love. I think is awesome. But
it's very comprehensive. I was definitely more caught up in the information side of it at first, but yeah, there's a lot here. I mean, some of the parts of governance that are normally foreign to anyone who's new is, the fact that you can queue up something that's been voted on. What I can do it. Isn't there someone special high up in some hierarchy that does it? And the answer is, well, no. I mean, it's that's why it's community owned. As long as you're holding a token, you can participate in the governance of the protocol.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's something I think a lot of folks don't know.
Yeah,
and it's right there for you.
Cool. Dennison, anything else here that you think is worth calling out? I mean, we covered a lot on Tally. Anything else? Actually, maybe the next question really should be about what else is next that we haven't already covered, or also too, if you want to talk more generally about what you're excited to see developed in terms of on-chain governance, anything that can be complementary to Tally.
Mm-hmm. So what's next is mobile support. We don't have mobile support right now.
That makes
sense. As a
sense.
part of that, we're probably going to revamp our Web3 provider to support Wallet Connect, and hopefully make our support for hardware wallets more. We currently support hardware wallets. We want to see if we can support more of them. We've been speaking to a number of large custody providers, and once we start talking about tools that support sort of the more industrial sized participants in governments, in governance, it starts to look a little bit different. So that's one thing that we're working on. More data, right? We want to try and find a way to give even better views and perspectives into what's happening in these protocols. More actionable information, I would say, is another thing. And probably pulling more data in from the places where discussions about governance happens, right? Twitter and this type of thing. Governor Bravo has some exciting new features coming up that will be very interesting to support, mainly when you vote. And so in Tally, of course, I didn't show this, but you can actually vote on things, right, directly with it. And oh, you know what? Oh yeah, I'm on Ring-Computer. I'm not gonna do that because I'll pop up my MetaMask. So you can, right now you can vote, But soon you'll be able, with Governor Bravo, you'll be able to say why you voted the way that you voted. And that's going to be really exciting to be able to capture also people's opinions on their votes, right? And this is adding more context into decision making, right? Giving more interesting information. So we're really excited about really going deep right now on Governor Alpha and Governor Bravo. People do ask us about other governances. For the moment, there aren't any other governance styles on our roadmap. We've been, kind of just specializing, digging really deep here. But we are open to it if enough people sort of say, hey, we must have Aave governance. We will like start to brainstorm how to make that possible. But our real focus is by doing one thing. I think we've been able to do a really good job and really try and like dig in on that and sort of become the experts in this kind of governance solution.
Yeah, it's nuts to me, all that's already been built here. I was clicking around into the chart with all of the it shows basically how people voted according to the size of circle and color. And just to be able to start to do that, I would never have been able to navigate looking into like, well, how did this one large voting entity vote across other protocols? Like if you think about like Polychain that's involved in a lot of different DeFi protocols, this is really this is definitely like an equalizer. There's a lot of information that I'm going to be digging through here. I think there's a lot. I think just screenshotting some of this too could really help a lot of people to get more excited and understand that like there's more than just voting yes or no on these proposals. Mm-hmm. There's really understanding how is a community voting? And honestly, I think this helps you to better understand whether you want to join a community. I think Absolutely. There's quite a few more mature names on here, but it's cool. It also might even like help to encourage adopting this compound style of governance. I never realized that there were, that it was that different. Like I participate in Aave and I didn't realize Aave's was that much different. So are you basically saying there would need to be like more customized work done to support the style of governance that Aave is using?
Yeah, at the moment it would require us to, we can certainly do it, right? It's certainly doable. It would require us to set up support for it deliberately, which we could do. Certainly if that's something the Aave community is really passionate about, we would love to hear from you and hear from that. And if the Aave team is passionate about having another tool out there, it'd be great to hear from them. But right now, we have a thesis around ERC20s are kind of the building block that made decentralized finance possible, right? We created a really initial building block that was composable, Lego. Right, and that Lego is the basis of everybody's Lego house, Lego plane, Lego spaceship, Lego decentralized lending platform. Right, it's the core of everything. And then people started building new Legos on top of that, which were composed of ERC20s. Our position has been that what is possible in governance is another moment like that, where if we can standardize governance, right? And in our sort of view, we've really been leaning on Governor Alpha and Compound's work in the area, that this could be a building block, a Lego block for decentralized decision-making, right? Of DAOs, of consensus broadly, right? We see a lot of tools already exist that work with Compound today, right? There's autonomous proposals, which are smart contracts that work with the Governor Alpha to collect delegated votes and then submit a proposal once it passes the existing threshold, right? We see tools like comp.vote, which are tools to do the gasless, the protocol pays for it, comp pays for it, voting on the chain. So what we're sort of seeing as a future, what we envision as the future and want to help be the future is that protocols say, I'm building something, what should we do with governance, right? And before they say, oh, let's just think about it and build everything from scratch. They can just be like, look, let's just use a specific tool that's already out there. And actually, Unslash.Finance, who's on our site, they launched their protocol with Tally support, right? They came to us early on and said, hey, we are experts in this thing that we're building, but we're not experts in governance, right? We know Compound uses it. We know Uniswap uses it, right? We're talking billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars. This is what we want to use, right? Can you provide us the tooling and the interface for that, right? The answer is, of course, right? And going forward, that sort of like agility that you can build something, know that you have a secure governance structure using this like governance Lego, I think is going to be like the ERC20 moment of the decision making going forward. Because it's one thing to lock up billions of dollars in your protocol, but it's another thing to effectively govern those $1 billion in your protocol, right? Because today maybe it's like us, but tomorrow it's the whole world. And that brings an entirely different scale of responsibility, of transparency, of regulatory concerns, regardless of whether or not you care about regulatory concerns, they exist. And to do that, we are going to need to really come up with a standard for how we do this. So there are more tools than just Tally, right? Like we won't be able to do everything, right? So the same way that people can build confidently DeFi protocols on top of ERC20s, we want people to build confidently governance protocols on top of Compound Governor Alpha or Bravo. And we're not paid by Compound to say that. It's just got a really robust set of tools out there already. It's very simple. You know, it's very svelte tool set. So
I definitely now see the light on standardizing around governance. It makes sense. It makes it easier and more reliable. And I don't think that teams should be custom building out how they govern their protocol. It's not just cumbersome, I'm sure, to do. It's risky. It just leaves room for more error and we see what happens when there's error in how you code around contracts that hold funds. That's one thing. This really is seemingly just as dangerous. So yeah, absolutely. Really cool stuff. Dennison, anything else to call out? Like, one thing we did skip over was risks, and I think we really just called it out. Like, it's not as much the risk about Tally, it's just the risk that's involved in terms of governing with a protocol, and how important it is that this is set up properly, and maybe some of the benefits here to using a tool like Tally.
Yeah, there was recently, I don't have all the details, so please, dear viewers, forgive me for botching this. I commented, there was a governance attack on some DeFi protocol, I think over the weekend, that had been, I guess, the brewing in the long term. Someone had been buying up the governance token for cheap and accumulating it until they had a large enough position to make a proposal which minted them an infinite number of tokens, and then go take all those tokens and dump them on the market and run away with the money. And that is the danger of governance, right? Like, you can't, if your system can be changed, it can be changed to do something bad. And by changed, I don't mean upgrade, right? I'm not talking about upgrades. I'm talking about simply just change the levers of, change the parameters, right? Like, if you can issue infinite debt, what does that mean, right? Like, if you can get rid of all debt, what does that mean? We know that DeFi now is a very intricate web of systems, and very small changes can open up enormous exploits somewhere else on the map entirely. So what's important is that you do have tools like Tally that give you insight to the ecosystems, the communities that you participate on early, right? You can see where the governance power is going, who's accumulating it, right? You can see when proposals come up, right? You can get an email that says, hey, there's a proposal coming up and it's going to mint an infinite number of tokens for this one person, right? So you can see that, right? So, and if you don't have the power to vote against it, you can say, hey, you know what? This whole thing's cooked. I'm out. you have a chance to escape this, right? Like all these governances here are backed with time locks. So even when a decision passes, you still have 3 days or whatever the time lock particularly has to get out, right? And these type of things are important. This attack was possible to happen because so much of what happens in governance happens in the shadows, right? Like you don't notice it happening because where would you notice it, right? We're trying to be kind of like an ether scan for governance, right? You don't know transactions are happening right now unless you're looking for them. So tools like Tally really bring a level of transparency and visibility, which are, I think, critical for the effective functioning of these communities and protocols. But they also make them safer and long-term richer and more valuable. And I think our goals going forward to continue to really build those deeper and richer, more insights, more data, more actionable opportunities.
So cool, man. Definitely. The last time we talked, I went from like, I think I don't understand governance to I finally might get it, but this is this is awesome. This is definitely a tab everyone should open and just never close. One last question. In light of all that we've talked about with governance, is there any plan for Tally to have its own governance? I mean, essentially to tokenize or anything in the near term we can look forward to?
Sure. In the near term, I would say no. Long term, maybe. We deal with a lot of DAOs. We think about it. We definitely discuss pretty frequently, should we be a DAO, right?
Yeah.
And I think what we need to figure out is, how does a front end application be a DAO, right? Like right now, it's pretty easy to say Compound's a DAO. It's all smart contracts, right? Right now, the most of Tally is kind of a front end application. So our thought is, how do we become a DAO? And I think up until now, we've generally thought of as DAOs as things that had to exist on chain. I'm coming to the point where maybe they don't have to exist on chain, right? Like you see these changes in legislation in Wyoming. You see these these hybrid structures appearing. There might be an opportunity to say, maybe we could turn Tally, the company, into something that is a DAO that has this sort of like legal responsibility to respond to token holders. Dear regulators, I'm just talking out of my head. I have no idea what I'm saying, so you never use this against me. It's totally not.
No. It's a very honest take. We have had similar conversations. How does a front end become tokenized? It's just not clear. As compared to what we discussed here with like unslashed finance or compound or inverse finance. So I'm sure it's something that like we will see others solve it in the coming years, but it's just not as clear right now. Yeah, it's a really a tough one, but I can imagine, like, with all that you are doing to empower governance, it's like, should we be a DAO as well? And anyways.
I think there's an interesting, the reason why I think we have such like a knee-jerk reaction against anything that's sort of like real-world legal system, right? We're so against that real-world legal system, is that many of these things deal with our money and the ability to take your money from you, right? Like, and there's a lot of incentives to take your money from you. Maybe for teams and companies like our own, maybe because we are not directly handling the money, maybe there's an opportunity to be a hybrid real DAO organization, right? Where we're kind of a service provider to on-chain organizations, right? Like, and maybe that's a bridge that we can make work, right? Maybe that's a bridge where we can make that work. How do we make that work and not fall afoul of security regulations? I don't know. That's
the challenge. There's if anyone's interested to explore, like, again, different style of DAO that exists in Discord. I've been fascinated by the NFT 42 community, but NFT 42 I think owns what is Token Smart, and Token Smart is the Discord community that I have learned so much from. They focus on building with NFTs, and it's a large community of artists. And then
Token Smart or Token Art?
Token Smart, yeah. It's it's funny you asked that. I've asked that before too. Like, are you guys sure you didn't like misspell this and put an M in it? But it is, yeah, Token Smart. And they build like in lots of metaverses. So they host a weekly meetup in Crypto Voxels. And they've like built this stadium and lounges and all sorts of cool parcels in Crypto Voxels. But that was one. The other one too, related to NFTs, is Whale Shark, who's like a really well-known NFT collector. He and the whale community are running this insanely, I would say it's one of the more like elegant designs. Like you go in and they have very strictly defined rules and roles that you assume based on like how much of the token you hold. And I've been exploring it since he came on the show and was kind of explaining how they do it. And Dennison, it's nuts. It's like,
I gotta check this out. Check it
out. Kind of remind you of synthetics. I got so into synthetics in 2019 because I was fascinated by how the community was operating in Discord. It was like, this is the most vibrant community, and like, most of your interactions, 99% of it is in Discord. So there's something there, something there to learn from. But hey, thank you so much for your time. Like per usual, we went way over because I could talk to you for hours and hours. And I want to remind everyone, you should follow Dennison on Twitter. He also, you can learn a lot about things like CryptoPunks from him, since you were in the punks before they really.
I was in punks so long ago. I tried, like, one of my first things was like a meta punk thing. The contract is still out there. But I sort of ran it like I for Pride Month a number of years back. I had a contract where you take your CryptoPunk, you put it in, and you got back a punk that had the Pride flag, like rainbow behind it.
Oh wow!
And it was really cool. Now I wanted to bring it back. Now I'm not so sure because there's so many like straight up punk ripoffs right now, and it definitely would like feel like that because it'd be like, oh, it's just punks with a rainbow behind it.
Yeah.
But it's from a time when like punks were like 20 cents, so you weren't thinking, oh, I gotta like cash in on this lunch money, man. It was kind of funny. But
I didn't realize that they were ever that cheap as well. Like I would always see them in Twitter because certain people have them as their profile pics, and I loved it. I thought they were cool looking, but I just never gave it a second thought. And then they were still like 1 Ether, and I was like, wow, those are getting expensive. And then getting up to like 10 Ether, and I was like, wow, people have like really lost their minds. And now I mean, I've been converted. I don't own any.
Now they've lost their minds.
now I'm seeing people buying them for what they are. And I'm like, I mean, there's too much excitement and support around this. Like it's nuts how it takes time to get the masses to believe in something, but there's way too many people. I even in a bear market, I don't know if we're ever going to see a punk below $5,000 ever again. Like, and granted, they only transact in ETH, which I love. I think that's the more interesting part is it's all Ether transactions, but I don't know. I feel like everyone I've spoken with privately has said, oh, I'm gonna get a punk as soon as the market goes down. And I was like, you punk.
I had a bunch of punks and I sold them when it got to like half an ETH. Because like, oh my God, my thing is, I bought, and now I'm just like, people are like, dude, I have a friend and he like sends me, he's like, dude, they just sold one for $7 million. I'm like, don't talk to me.
Oh my God. I know.
Yeah.
It almost like reinforces this behavior of like that you should just not sell anything ever, and that you should just hold on and speculate on everything, which eventually people will be reminded we will be in a bear market again in the future, despite some saying we won't. Like we will, and then it will be the opposite again of like we have matured a lot. I am very grateful for that. It will be wonderful that like in a bear market, I will still be able to use Tally and participate in these vibrant communities, but like we're definitely like living through some like crazy times.
You know, there's I forget who said it, but there's somewhere that talks about like what money is. Years ago, there was an article called "You Don't Understand Bitcoin Because You Think Money is Real." And I think in that, and maybe I'm wrong now, they were talking about how like money is a bubble that just continues to expand.
That's right.
So I think about this idea of like the next bear market. I'm like, oh my God, the market's going to crash to way down there, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's how I'm viewing it too by now. I mean, I'm grateful to once, you know, you've been in this space since 2013. I've been now through a bull and a bear, and this is the second bull. And I would tell anyone, man, I had a blast once we got past the brutal part of like the bear market downturn, because that was a brutal 2018. But I saw some of the most incredible projects start to get built during that time, and like look at where we're at. You know, like this isn't all gonna like close up overnight. Like this is, you know.
I have to credit COVID a bit with the productivity of the blockchain space.
Yeah, no,
I've just been in at home building, you know. People are like, oh, now I'm rich, but there's nothing to spend money on, so I guess I'll just keep working, right? Like,
yeah,
big change. Like when you look at 2017, people are like, oh, I'm so important in the X blockchain space, and now I'm super rich, and now I've checked out and disappeared and never finished what I was working on.
That's right. Going to conferences, talking about stuff that you're going to do. I love where we're at now as a community. Now it's, you know, sure, like we still have scams that come up or rug pulls, but like there is a necessity now to show something of value. And, you know, I do think we are getting to a little bit of a crazy part of whatever part of the cycle we're in. I mean, I think like people are happy to launch something and you know start the next liquidity mining program, but it still doesn't replace like the intense amount of quality. And frankly, thank you to people were working very hard on quality NFT projects. I never thought I'd see the market say, "Oh, you know what I get? You know what the mainstream now gets is authentic, traceable, transparent." Ownership rights to scarce digital goods. Yes. What the hell happened? Like I thought DeFi made the most sense. You lend, you make money. Isn't this great? It's awesome, And now we're looking at NFTs, and I just cannot believe how many people are interested in them. But probably goes back to like I think the next wave we see, Dennison, is social tokens or creator tokens. I think those are right to explode. They already were getting popular, but I think that like once celebrities had caught on, or like anyone with a big following, anyone, you could be a professional athlete or you could be a musician, whatever. Once you realize you can engage with your audience, NFTs made sense. But I was like, what makes even more sense than NFTs or as much sense is creator tokens. So just,
well, who knows? I think, and maybe sometime I should come back and show you one of my friends. I've been working with him on an NFT project with his art. I'll show it to you offline.
That's cool. I'd love to see it.
But I think the NFTs themselves, like, people talk about the celebrities and like Lindsay Lohan or whatever, sure. But what I think is amazing is like, Beeple is amazing. Larva Labs and CryptoPunks is amazing, right? Like what's amazing here is that don't have to be this celebrity to make this work, right? Like what you're talking about. Years ago, I remember reading this one sort of article or whatever it was back whenever. It was about 1,000 true fans. All you need is, this is back in the old days. All you need is 1,000 true fans willing to spend $100 on you a year.
Wow.
And that's all you need, right? Yeah. So if you're drawing like posters or like doing beats or taking pictures or making pottery, I just started doing pottery. All you need is 1,000 fans who are willing to spend $100 on you a year, right? And that's not a huge ask, right? Especially today when like, you know, information communicates so quickly. So if you can do that, the power in like these creator tokens is that people can be empowered to do what they wanted to do. It's like poets. My sister is a poet, right? Once upon a time, poets were famous, right? And you could argue that some poets are still famous today. But like people could like, what's your job? Oh, I'm a poet. Oh yeah, what do you do? I'll write you a poem. Up until recently, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Right. But you can imagine a future where you can say, yeah, I'll write you a poem. Right. So, people really love getting poems by me. They're an NFT. And I'm coming up with a business as I say this out loud. Like buy my NFT poetry. Right. And then in the final book, it's the 100 poems. Everybody bought them for $1,000. It's a poetry book. Now I can live for a year or two off this poetry book because I just have a small group of people who believe in me. Yeah, it's great if you're a celebrity and half the world believes in you because of your music. Great. But what's really powerful is if you're just some person being yourself and just a small number of people on planet Earth, just 1,000 people believe in you and are willing to spend $10 a month on you, right? That's the power of OnlyFans, right? As crazy as that analogy is, but that's the power of it, right? Like,
no, it is.
What are you getting out of this relationship? Nothing much, but here's a couple dollars, right? And people can live off that. And that is really revolutionary when you talk about artists and creatives and people who do things that just don't normally fit into society, right? Like, what do? I make customized hula hoops. Great. That should be something that you can live and be happy doing. And, hopefully in the future, when you look at projects that are bringing like universal basic income, hopefully we can transition some other things onto the blockchain, health insurance, co-ops around these type of things. You could start to see a future. And this is like, and then of course we could end on this. You can start to see a future where you don't have to get a 9-to-5. You don't have to adhere to like all these social norms. Yeah. You can be who you wanted to be. And it's not some sort of weird freeloading situation where you're just like, I just bust for money on the side of the street, right? Like, and that's actually a hard job, right? But you could see a future where you can work from anywhere, you can do what you want to do, you can be the person that you want to be. And that's kind of like what drives me in the first place.
Oh, it's radical, man. Yeah, I so well said too.
I could go on forever.
No. This is it's so well said. It's why before this wave of mainstream attention came to NFTs, man, I thought I was still late to the game. Like especially because talking with the friends that I have now, I felt like, gosh, like how did I not understand NFTs back in 2018? Like that wasn't that long ago, and it should have been more obvious to me. But what you're talking about it's that translation of, as long as you can get a small group of people to believe in you and you can distribute it. That's why I've always seen DeFi and NFTs as they go together, because one of the things the internet did solve for us is like mass communications to a larger audience. And that's been wonderful, but you've never had ownership of what you've put out there. And that's where we go back to like Beeple. Beeple his story was mentioned on John Oliver's HBO show. I was watching his Late Night Tonight last night, and I for a sec was like, wow, I can't believe that it's just nuts, like how this has gotten so much attention. But people miss the part of the story. Like they mention it at the beginning of every time they reference him. This guy has been doing a piece of art every day for over 5,000 days, which is what the piece actually references. And it has every single piece in it. And I'm like, hey, call it what you want. People are buying into a story. And Metakoven, who is just, I truly has proven himself now to be the most like epic collector in the world. He buys into that. He was on Yield TV. All he talked about is just, wanting to, I recognize like he's been very fortunate financially, but he talks about just how much he loves art, wants to support artists. And at this point, I mean, money is no, it's something he'll never have to worry about. But part of his story, Metakoven's as a collector, is that I mean, I don't know exactly what his financial situation was previous to mining Bitcoin, but I mean, he referenced a pretty simple life of, he was grateful he had a job and was able to like pick up on this new interesting technology, Bitcoin, and start to mine it. And now I think when he sees that sort of freedom in his own life to create, and like he clearly seems even more fulfilled now working with empowering artists through NFTs. I think he sees that opportunity for them. Like, you don't need to just make this for free. You don't need to, you can continue to focus your time on what you do, which is very challenging already because the distribution has been somewhat standardized. Now we've standardized it with
the blocks
and the blocks. And so it's just nuts. I mean, I my little girl loves to make art. She's only 2. And I think like I could see in my family, just we all have pretty traditional jobs, if you call whatever my job is here traditional. And I could see people saying, oh, that's great, they love art. But like there are a lot of parents out there who won't encourage their kids to work in art for fear that they won't have a stable income. I actually think that's something that can go away now. I think this is the start of like, everything you've seen with content creators or influencers. Take what good was in that, empowering people, whether or not you can stand the model of an influencer, and take that and give that to someone who can make 1,000 people support them, every year.
Exactly.
Just so cool.
On my Facebook feed, I do use Facebook sometimes. People were like really kind of like being critical of the Beeple thing, right? Selling it for 69 million. What is this? It's just like, if you think about it, there are people in our society who make, CEOs who get, fire everybody and, get firing bonus of tens of millions of dollars. In the scale of things that don't really make sense or value and effort and all that, people spend 5,000 days creating something every day, right? Like, that's like, people are like, oh, it's an absorbent amount of money. When you do the math, it's like what, 13 some $1,000 per piece,
right?
Doesn't really seem that crazy. Seems like he earned it. Seems like that's worth it, right?
Yeah.
Like certainly, like if you think of all the ways that rich people make money sort of arbitrarily, this seems like an exceptionally well-earned story. Right.
Right. And it's the story. It is the story. People buy into it. Like I heard a number of people applauding people before I had really, I only started to like look at his art and follow him 3-4 months ago, right as he was like getting into NFTs. And I was like, why are people so obsessed with him? Like, I looked at the art and thought, this is really cool. I get that part of it, but just why are people fawning over this guy, like, and almost in a good way, like seeking to be like, what did he do that makes people love him so much? And I'm like, oh, just listen to a single interview with him. It's all about his story. And it's the fact that you resonate with him. You look at him and you're like, I mean, this guy has just been very dedicated to his craft, and he's a very kind and humble person, and he's clearly very grateful for what's happened, but he's also reacting the way you would think someone should react, which is, holy shit. The video of the bids going up is so much fun to watch. And
I haven't watched it yet, but now I'm going to go watch it.
Oh, you got it. Oh, it's so funny. It's him in a living room with his family, and it goes from like 25 million, which they're already stunned, but it goes from 25 to maybe 50 million. And then it's the last like 5 seconds, it hops from 60 to 69 million. And it's cool. It's a really, It's a great story, but that's it. To me, he's the Cal Ripken Jr. of artists. Like Cal Ripken Jr. was a great baseball player, but people loved him because of the dedication. And really, if you look across all different like verticals and if you want to go through like sports, for example, people just love someone who's that dedicated. It's, I will forever be the biggest Michael Jordan fan. I grew up with him as my idol, and I still think of him as that. And it has to do with his work ethic and his dedication. And NFTs reward that. They give you a way to reward it more effectively than ever before in history. You no longer have to be as I think there truly is and was an element of luck. And I think you're leveling the playing field more. Will we get frothy projects over the coming like years? Sure. Will some of this like maybe deflate? I don't know. Sure. Like but like, did anyone who invested in, I'm taking it down the wrong path with investing, but just if for anyone that got involved with Amazon back in 2001 or 2000, like, is anyone saying, see, I told you this was all a bubble and that people were getting ahead of themselves? It's like, no, this is the future. And that's how I see NFTs, not from an investment standpoint. Nobody go do your own research. I'm not an investment advisor. So
no. I totally get what you're saying. It's like anyone who ever bought a Picasso, do they sit around looking at it being like, oh, so dumb. Now I just have a Picasso. Ugh. I wish I had like a flat screen TV instead of this Picasso. So stupid. Right?
Yeah. Like,
I think everyone goes, well, at least I have a Picasso, So
that's right. And other people want it, and that's it. So someone said, what do you do with the people discredit it by trying to call it like a JPEG, and you're like, they do what people do with it. Have you ever like seen what rich people collect? They love art. People spend unimaginable amounts of money. What do they do with it? They brag about it. They show it off. They say, I'm the owner of X, and hopefully they enjoy it. I mean, that's why like we have the museums that we do. I think the real disconnect actually is in the US. I feel like the arts is just not supported the way it should be in the US. And this is cool to see a digital artist getting the attention that he's getting. And I hope there's all these other artists that have been doing such incredible work, but have been specifically creating digital art that is powered by NFTs. So, I hope like Josie Bellini is incredible, and I hope she continues to see returns from it. A lot of money, Pac. I mean, there's just so many of them in our space that I'm excited for the rest of the world to be like, wow, like all these people were born out of the crypto art space. Like, this is really cool. Well, and one day too, we won't even call it crypto art. We'll just say art. All be, it's all art at the end of the day. But this is so great. I'm gonna edit this part out as a second part of the episode. This is great. I got to talk NFTs with you. So just thanks so much, Dennison. This was awesome. I'm gonna do the outro video, so we'll be in a green room if there's anything else you want to talk about. But just thanks everyone for tuning in. Tomorrow, coincidentally, we'll be talking NFTs with Rizzle, who's one of the co-founders of NFT 42, and he's he is definitely one of 3 people that like moved the needle for me and like made me understand why DeFi and NFTs really go together. So we'll have him on tomorrow, and then Wednesday we'll talk. This is important for all of us. Layer 2. We'll have Anthony Sassano on and talk all about the work that they're doing with Polygon, but more on the state of just layer 2 and how close we are to being able to use more of DeFi on L2. So anyways, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe at tv.zapper.fi. Where did my little thing go? Yeah, there it is. Subscribe there at tv.zapper.fi for all 85 episodes. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much, Denison.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.